And I got to boast about Landers University. It is, so many of you that I'm looking at, I've had throughout the years. And when I first started teaching at Landers, I thought, how are they going to accept a Catholic nun? And they did. They did. It's been a wonderful alliance that we have had, and I'm delighted to be here. Let me tell you about the birth of this Sizzle or Fizzle. I'm known in my town as a speaker. And so when somebody backs out in some case, they call me and they say, they don't tell me somebody backed out, but I'm pretty sure with this one they did. Will you ever speak at the Chamber of Commerce breakfast? We'll even give you the title. It's called Sizzle or Fizzle. And I said, what does that mean? I mean, I don't know what to do with Sizzle or Fizzle. Oh, you'll think of something. Well, I got into it, and I really enjoyed it, and I gave the talk for the chamber. And then I thought, when they wanted me to speak in Chicago, I'll take that Sizzle or Fizzle and revamp it, not for businesses, but for schools. And so that's what I did. Because of my work in teacher education since, gosh, I started at our university in 72 or 3, but started in Montessori in 75. Teaching teachers, and I would supervise in classrooms. And the last couple of years, because I get 30 or 40 students a year in my program, and that means a lot of visits to student teachers. And so I have gone to schools that sizzle, and I've gone to schools that I've watched fizzle. You know, and so that's what I'd like to talk to you. I tried to figure out, what do the successful schools have in common? Well, I think some of the successful schools that I know have a strong leadership. If they have a strong leadership, if they have a board of education that is strong and not micromanaging the school, if they have well-educated teachers, the teachers that I know from here, many of them are certified teachers, and they're also certified Montessori teachers. And so they're well-educated. Many of them have supportive parents. We had a talk here last night, and there were a lot of parents, and with lots of questions afterwards. Most of them said, I didn't want to ask the questions in front of the group, but they asked me later. But they're supportive parents. They're ready, they know that you know what you're doing. And the presence in the school of a community or family atmosphere, that's really important. I'm a consultant for some inner city schools in, they're called Martin Luther King Montessori School in Indiana. And they have such a community that when I go there to speak, or when I go there to give workshops, it's not just the teachers, it's not just the assistants, but it is the bus drivers, it is the secretaries, it is the women who work in the kitchen. It's all. They have that kind of a community. And they're sizzling. Let me tell you, they're having a hard time paying their bills. They were recently given a brand new building by a corporation that built this building for childcare, but then moved to Chicago, and they gave them the building. And I was rejoicing with these women, and they said, yeah, but now we have to pay the heat and the lighting and the air conditioning. We didn't have that before when they were in these poor little hovels where the church picked up that. All right, let me read a wonderful story called A Valuable Lesson. And because you're going to see some sizzle, or fizzle rather, in this, hopefully you'll get my point. And this is a true story. It was written and related by Malcolm Forbes. A lady in a faded gingham dress and her husband dressed in a homespun threadbare suit stepped off the train in Boston and walked timidly without an appointment into Harvard University president's outer office. The secretary could tell in a moment that such backwards country hicks had no business at Harvard and probably didn't even deserve to be in Cambridge. She frowned. "We want to see the president," the man said softly. "He'll be busy all day," the secretary snapped. "We'll wait," the lady replied. For hours, the secretary ignored them, hoping that the couple would finally become discouraged and go away. They didn't, and the secretary grew frustrated and finally decided to disturb the president, even though it was a chore she always regretted. "Maybe if they just see you for a few minutes, they'll leave," she told him. He sighed in exasperation and nodded. Someone of his importance obviously didn't have the time to spend with them, but he detested gingham dresses and homespun suits cluttering up his outer office. The president, stern-faced with dignity, strutted toward the couple. The lady told him, "We had a son who attended Harvard for 1 year. He loved Harvard. He was happy here. But about a year ago, he was accidentally killed. And my husband and I would like to erect a memorial for him somewhere on campus." The president wasn't touched. He was shocked. "Madam," he said gruffly, "we can't put up a statue for every person who attended Harvard and died. If we did, this place would look like a cemetery." "Oh, no," the lady explained quickly. "We don't want to erect a statue. We thought we would like to give a building to Harvard." The president rolled his eyes. He glanced at the gingham dress and the homespun suit. Then he exclaimed, "A building? Do you have any earthly idea how much a building costs? We have over $7.5 million in the physical plant at Harvard." For a moment, the lady was silent. The president was pleased. He could get rid of them now. And the lady turned to her husband and said quietly, "Is that all it costs to start a university? Why don't we just start our own?" Her husband nodded. The president's face wilted in confusion and bewilderment, and Mr. and Mrs. Leland Stanford walked away, traveling to Palo Alto, California, where they established the university that bears the name and a memorial to their son. You can easily judge the character of others by how they treat those who can do nothing for them or to them. Think about it. Think about the sizzle and the fizzle in that story. Attitude is crucial. I saw today, we were somewhere getting a sandwich between things, and there was a sign on the back of this man's t-shirt about attitude. Not only in schools does attitude matter, but in life. We need to learn to laugh at ourselves and laugh with each other. I believe that attitude is more important than being correct. Many years ago, I was a very young sister, and I attended a seminar where we were given the following example. This psychologist was saying that he was trying to let us know about attitude, and he said, this nurse, let's call her Anne. Anne was walking down the hall in the hospital, and she was very happy, and she meets Dr. Bill. And Anne says, "Good morning, Dr. Bill." And he goes, She walked by and thought, what did I do wrong? Did I offend him? Did I, am I not dressed right? And the whole day was ruined for her. Then he said, let's take Nurse Jane. Nurse Jane is very happy, and she goes into the hospital, and she passes Dr. Bill. "Good morning, Dr. Bill." And he goes, And she said, I wonder what's wrong with him. He's got a problem. Do you see the difference in the attitude? If I think everything is my fault, it'll become my fault. Charles Swindoll wrote this. He said, "The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude, to me, is more important than facts. It's more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people think or say or do. It's more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. It will make or break a company or a school, or, I guess, a family, a church, a home. The remarkable thing is, we have a choice every day regarding the attitude we will embrace for that day. We cannot change our past. We cannot change the fact that people will act in a certain way. We cannot change the inevitable. The only thing we can do is play on the one string we have, and that is our attitude. I am convinced, says Charles, that life is 10% of what happens to me, and 90% is attitude, how I react to it. And so it is with you. We are in charge of our own attitude. One way for us to help our coworkers to develop a positive attitude is through the practice of mirroring. For those of you who were here last night, I apologize for saying this again, but you hear it something like this over and over again, and finally it sticks. Mirroring is descriptive or appreciative praise. Because when I mirror to others, and hopefully they will mirror to us, what happens is we know how to think about ourselves. So we describe what we see. I noticed that your class worked very well together today. You must be proud of them. Or we might just describe what we see without making that little final thing of being proud. You just finished all your courses at Landers and you got your credential. You must be proud of yourself. Get the idea? All right. Because Carl Jung says that if someone speaks to me that way, I know how to think about myself. It doesn't mean that you and I don't like to have a pat on the back once in a while. Absolutely, we do. But we have to know how to think about ourselves. Don't wait until you're in your 70s to be able to say, gee, I did a good job. You should be able, our little kids can say that really early on. Mirroring is self-affirming and reveals to the person who she is, or who he is, and who he or she is becoming. Praise is not mirroring. Praise tends to be evaluative. It implies judgment and can create a need for constant reassurance. Mirroring affirms the self. I respect you and what you feel about yourself. Without this kind of verification in a school community or in a home community, the person feels disoriented and he's always looking to the coworker, to the administrator, to the board for praise. Because we want to know we are of value, so we wait to hear what they say. You don't need to hear what they say. I say to my university students, write down how you feel about yourself and how did you get there. And they always say, well, I feel this about myself, and it's what my mother always said, it's what my dad always said, what my husband said, what my wife said, what my boss says. And I say to them, what do you say? You say to a 3-year-old something like, you must be proud of yourself, and they'll say, yeah, I am, you know. I had a little 4-year-old tell me that now that he had his 4th birthday, he fit better in the tub. He was sure he was taller. That was the way he said it. Because lack of verification creates the feeling of non-being in the workplace. Gary Smalley is one of my heroes. I don't know if you've ever heard of his tapes. It's called Hidden Keys to Loving Relationships. And you say to yourself, what is a nun doing with hidden keys to loving relationships? But a married couple, friends of mine, heard Gary Smalley, and they start lending me these videotapes. And I bought them. I bought 18 because they're so wonderful. And my students check them out like you check out a book from my library. But Gary Smalley, on one of his tapes, said that he told this story. He said, let's say we have Professor Smith. And Professor Smith is teaching Psychology 101. And he's telling the students about this whole idea of attitude, of mirroring, and helping people feel good about themselves. And it was the end of class. He met them 3 times a week. The next time that they met, he was late. So the students said to each other, let's do our own experimentation. Whenever Professor Bill goes over by the radiator in the front, because he walked around a lot, when he goes over by the radiator, Look interested. Sit up tall. Write notes. Raise your hand. Ask questions. Light your face up. But when he walks over by the door, slouch down in your seat. Don't give him eye contact. Don't write anything. Don't ask any questions. So they started this little experiment. They did it Monday night. They did it Wednesday night. They did it Friday night. By Friday night, he was sitting on the radiator. He didn't know why he was sitting on the radiator, so they told him what they were doing. And he said, touche, you're right, it worked. Because I knew that things went better when I was over there. So I stayed over there. They controlled him. They controlled him by their face, by how they reacted to him. T.S. Eliot said, it is in the conversation not overheard, not intended to be heard with sidewise looks, that often brings death to the heart of the person. Ladies and gentlemen, you and I have all experienced that. Do you know what he's talking about, don't you? No one says to you, you're a rat fink, pardon the language, but in other words, they don't have to say it, you feel it. With disinterest, with the facial expression, whatever. Don't you know when people approve of you, even though they don't say it, and disapprove of you? You better believe you do. I know I do. Okay? In my early days of speaking at schools, and I was coming out with this love and respect and no tests and all this kind of, I would have teachers walk right out. And I knew they couldn't take what I was saying. Another way to develop a great attitude is by developing a relationship with the people that you work with in community. I believe whether you have a two-person school, two classrooms, or whether you have a huge classroom like this one, school like this one, if you're going to have community with these people, you have to develop a relationship. And Gary Smalley, again on another tape, uses his hands. He was a wonderful teacher because he used props all the time. He held up his hand and he said, if I'm going to develop a relationship with you, I have to touch on three levels. The first level, he used the fingertips. And that's the spiritual side of who I am. Now, I'm not talking religion. I'm talking spiritually. I share with you my joys, my fears, my dreams. You know, if you have a relationship with somebody, those are things you share. You don't share that with everybody. I could say jokes. She told me a funny joke. But anyway, that's the spiritual side. We also share, if we have a relationship, our mind. He used this part of the hand. I tell you facts, you tell me facts. You tell me what you know, I tell you what I know. That's a sharing. And in the center of his hand, he said, we share touch. Appropriate, but touch. You know, we give high fives, we hug, we shake hands. If I have all those three things, I have a relationship. So we have to have that with the people that we work with. All three, okay? And he tells this story. He says, a fifth grade boy comes home from school, and I'm going to tell you the story of what not to do and what to do. Here's what not to do. This fifth grade boy comes home, and he has this report card, and he gives it to his dad. And his dad looks at it, and he sees a F in history. And this is the boy, okay? He's open. This is the boy. Here, Dad, here's my report card. And the dad bangs his hand on the table and says, look at this, you failed history again. You got an F in history. If you weren't playing soccer so much, but you see what happened to the boy? As the father yells at him, he closes his spirit. Now, once his spirit's closed, and the father will say, all right, what are we going to do about this? He's not going to share his mind. Is there anything I can do to help you? He's not going to share. or if you went to shake his hand, he would back up, right? That's the wrong thing to do. Let's have the same story. The boy comes home and says, Dad, here's my report card. And the father looks and sees that failing mark in history, and he says, son, let's sit down. Look at this. You did real well in math. You're good in math and science. You must have a great interest in that. And in language arts, great art. But what about this history? You failed history. The child's not closing his spirit. It's open. And then the father says, what can we do? What do you think you should do about this? And the boy's going to share. And he says, Dad, maybe if I only played soccer 3 nights a week, and the other nights I would practice my history. Okay, that's good. What can I do? Well, Dad, the night before the exam, the tests, would you ask the question? Sure, I can do that. And then they give each other the high five, they touch, they still have an open relationship. When I first heard Gary Smalley telling that, I thought to myself, I know there have been times when I have caused people to close their spirit to me. And I know I have closed my spirit to people. Think about it. It happens all the time. It must not happen in our community of our school or our family. Okay? When people work in a place that cares about them, they contribute a lot more than duty. I mentioned earlier that we have to learn to laugh at ourselves with other coworkers. We all know about the research that tells us that laughter reduces tension, heals bodies, halts judgment, and stops the inner turmoil that comes from being too serious about too little. I have a friend right now who is suffering with cancer. And when I go to visit her, we laugh. We laugh a lot. We talk about the time we started a school together, and we just laugh about everything. And I believe that's going to help her. Think about it. Death is serious. Loss is serious. A change in schedule is not serious. Irritating, maybe. Exasperating, maybe. But not serious. Laugh. My God is a God who laughs. Why not? Here we are racing through life assuming that everything depends on us. And nothing is perfect yet. Wouldn't you think we would get used to imperfection? No wonder God finds us so funny. Joan Chittister, in her book, Songs of Joy, says, here's a good idea. The next time you're really upset about the important things in life, like being late for an appointment, or watching your dog knock over your best vase, or finding out that the car won't start, or discovering that the report isn't where it's supposed to be, laugh. I remember when I was teaching 3 to 6, sometimes, scientists have told me this is true. I'm not a scientist. But scientists have told me when there's a big storm, the pull of gravity is different. And kids do really odd things. And I remember one time I knew a storm was coming because outside my windows I could see the tops of these bushes going like this. And the kids were weird. I mean, they were noisy. A nice little girl was standing on top of a table. I mean, this was not something they usually did. And I went to each teacher and said, laugh, and just help the child down from the table, but don't get so excited because it's the pull of gravity. Laugh. The problem will disappear because nothing is a problem unless we call it that, right? Yeah. Develop a sense of humor on all levels. Never confuse humor and ridicule. Humor cleanses the soul of tension, and ridicule creates tensions. Laughter is a sign of mental health. Did you know that? Balance, perspective, and maturity. The people who laugh a lot have those gifts. It's also a sign of holiness for the same reason. The holiest people I know, and I know some really holy people. No, I really do. I mean, these women in their 80s and their 90s who have given their whole life to God, and now they can't see and they can't hear. I've seen this, and they laugh. They laugh, and they're the kind of people I like to spend time with. The Quran says they deserve paradise who make their companions laugh. Isn't that nice? Isn't that refreshing? All we have to do is stop complaining and laugh. Of all days, de Chamfort wrote in 1796, the day on which one has not laughed is the one most surely wasted. Oh no, we say, a wasted day is a day when we don't get finished all the work we intend to do. The work that we decided we'd finish when we woke up in the morning. But work is never finished. Take it from me. It's never finished. And I'm kind of glad it's not. Because if I didn't have something to do, I'd be bored out of my tree. All my friends are afraid when I think about retiring. But I don't think I'm going to retire until the Lord retires me. My suggestion, forget the work. Change your standards of success and laugh. Not only is it easier, it may leave the world a great deal better off than one more ream of paper printed to fill a wastebasket. One more routine hoop jumped. Warren Benes says, in life, change is inevitable. In schools, change and growth are vital. Peggy Loeffler is a great Montessorian, and she's encouraging us to break with tradition when appropriate in order to find better ways of doing things. If we continue doing what we've always done, we will continue to get the same results. Remember to sizzle, not fizzle, as a school community. Remove the stop signs by avoiding statements such as, we've tried that before. That's not the way we do it here. I recently heard about a group that they want to move ahead, but they don't want to change anything. Now, I would think here in South Carolina, you have a number of public schools that have Montessori. And you know, they're struggling because the state says, you must do this, 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 and this. And they know that what Montessori wants them to do, that they will finally get to this, 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 and this. But they have to do it now, by a certain age, by a certain date. That is so sad. We just need to convert them. As we work to make our community sizzle, we may identify significant obstacles. Wouldn't it be good, as a school community, in your different schools, to sit down and make a list of the obstacles? I have a whole talk that I'm not giving here, I promise, but it's the obstacles that we encounter as teachers or administrators, and we learn to live with them. Don't learn to live with it. Talk about it as a community and figure out what you can do to remove these obstacles. In a little book called 141 Ways to Walk the Talk by Eric Harvey, he said, our efforts to do a better job of living our values will undoubtedly come with flaws. But if we meet those flaws and occasionally failures with both persistence and patience, we can unlock the fortunes that exist within our schools. Create a worry jar. Each time you have a worry, write it down, place it in the jar. Take time each week to open the jar, take one out at a time, and worry about it. When you get tired of worrying about something, remove it from the jar. Now, it sounds silly, but the first time I read that, I thought, I'm going to do that. And I did it. My nephew, who's my office manager, thinks I have lost it when he sees me sitting there reading all of these things. Over time, you have fewer and fewer worries. These are only a few ways that you and I can and must aid the school community to really sizzle. And this is the only way that we can prove to others in this society and to our schools that the American Montessori Society will live on in the future. We're going to talk tomorrow in my keynote about how can we stay faithful to our roots while moving into the future. Because I was trained in Montessori in the 60s, and there's a lot of things I do differently than I was trained to do. And those of you who are in training now, maybe 10 years from now, you'll find a better way of doing something. Don't get stuck. Along with all of this, it helps if you love your work. Now, I must say, I have never met, hardly ever met, and I've been to a lot of schools, a Montessori teacher who was not passionate about her work or his work. Really, and people think we're quite foolish because we don't work for the money. We really do not. We need to be passionate about it. I am passionate about my work. I love teaching. And even though in my next birthday I'll be 73, I'm thinking, that's young, I can still do a lot. In all the schools I know of, they've written a mission statement. Do you know your mission statement? Do you read it? I know schools put it on the wall, but very seldom do people stand at the wall and read it. When I was on the American Montessori Society board, it bothered me that as the American Montessori Society, we have a mission statement, and they never read it. They never talked about it. So what I did was I put it on little, you'd call it, anything is a holy card, but anyway, I put it on a bookmark and plasticized it, and I passed it out at one of the board meetings. And I said, I think we should start every board meeting reading this. When I meet with my staff, we read our mission statement because that's why we're here. I think every time you meet together as a staff, you should read that so you know what you are all about. You need to be passionate about your work. Live your mission statement. Because the mission statement guides, directs the school, the community, it should be uppermost in your mind. And if it is, you will sizzle. Get excited about positive things. Stay optimistic and opportunity-minded. A positive outlook energizes, empowers, and actually strengthens your work, your relationship with others. It really does. Spread the sizzle. Get enthused about others who are enthusiastic. Do you know that enthusiasm is contagious? Excitement is contagious. Passion is contagious. But so is negative thought. So is the person who's going to down you all the time. I read some research. I'm not a golfer, so I'm most probably using all the wrong language, but I remember reading this research years ago where they followed golfers around. And when a golfer would hit the ball and it went in the hole, he'd say, I knew that was going to happen. And when it went into the sand or into the water, they said, I knew that was going to happen. I remember years ago, I still teach in Boston, but we had this one, what do I call her? We were both in training at the same time, but she was a lot younger than I at the time. Hippie? Do you say hippie? Yeah. Most of you don't know what a hippie is. But she was your typical hippie. And years after we got our credentials and our masters and stuff, we were both teaching in the same training program. And she drove her little Volvo. And Ann Newbert would send Judy and I to Boston to get something. Now, if you've never been to Boston, you don't understand how awful it is to try to find a parking place. If you park in a structure, it's $40, for a little time. So we always tried to get a place on the street. So Judy would say to me, she'd be driving, Anthonita, close your eyes. Visualize, she'd say, it's just the way she talked. Visualize a parking place when I turn the corner. And I would do it. I mean, she spoke with such authority. There I am, visualizing it. Sure enough, we'd go to the corner, and there it was. And I'd say to her, that's amazing. It doesn't happen when I'm driving alone, let me tell you. I think Judy had the faith for it, But I think that it was contagious that she would do that. She would just say, we're going to find it. We're not going to pay that $40. An attitude of positive expectancy calls forth our potential. It heightens our awareness of opportunity, and we tend to find what we expect to see. And our attitude actually helps create the conditions. That sounds very simple, but it's true. I'm going to read that again because I think it's real important. We tend to find what we expect to see. And our attitude actually helps create the conditions. The good news is that optimism can be learned and practiced. It can be developed as easily as any other skill. We can make it a mental habit and it will make a major difference in how well we handle whatever comes at us daily. Approaching job challenges with a positive spirit and faith in the future actually protects your career. We've had a lot of building going on at the Mother House. We just finished a chapel, and it was a chapel where the ceiling was falling down, so architects came in, and for 2 years, they were traipsing on our carpeting, all the crud they got from the building. And I said to one of the ladies who was vacuuming, every 10 minutes I'd look out and she'd be vacuuming, and I said to her one day, I'm so sorry that those men walk through with their dirty boots and make this mess for you. She said, I'm not. It's called job security. And I thought, isn't that great? So now when I see them working, I think job security. How nice. Who would have thought about that? Focus on the upside potential daily. As the hit song once said, blessed are the believers. Let me read you this story about Rose. It's one of my very favorite stories. And I guess it's true. It says unknown author, and where I got it, I don't know. But people know I love things like this, so they send them to me. The first day of school, our professor introduced himself and challenged us to get to know someone we didn't already know. I stood up to look around when a gentle hand touched my shoulder. I turned around to find a wrinkled little old lady beaming at me with a smile that lit up her entire being. She said, "Hi, handsome. My name is Rose. I'm 87 years old. Can I give you a hug?" I laughed and enthusiastically responded, "Of course you may," and she gave me a giant squeeze. "Why are you in college at such a young, innocent age?" I asked her. She jokingly replied, "I'm here to meet a rich husband, get married, and have a couple children, and then retire and travel." No, seriously, I asked. I was curious about what may have motivated her to be taking on this challenge at her age. "I always dreamed of having a college education, and now I'm getting one," she told me. After class, we walked to the Student Union building and shared a chocolate milkshake. We became instant friends. Every day for the next 3 months, we would leave class together and talk nonstop. I was always mesmerized listening to this time machine as she shared her wisdom and experience with me. Over the course of the year, Rose became a campus icon. She easily made friends wherever she went. She loved to dress up, and she reveled in the attention bestowed upon her from the other students. She was living it up. At the end of the semester, we invited Rose to speak at our football banquet. I'll never forget what she taught us. She was introduced, and she stepped up to the podium. As she began to deliver her prepared speech, she dropped her 3x5 cards on the floor. Frustrated and a little embarrassed, she leaned into the microphone and simply said, "I'm sorry I'm so jittery. I gave up beer for Lent, and this whiskey is killing me." I'll never get my speech back in order, so let me just tell you what I know. As we laughed, she cleared her throat and began. "We do not stop playing because we are old. We grow old because we stop playing. There are only 4 secrets to staying young, being happy, and achieving success. You have to find humor every day. You have to laugh every day. You've got to have a dream. When you lose your dreams, you die. We have so many people walking around who are dead, and they don't even know it. There's a huge difference between growing older and growing up. If you're 19 years old and you lie in bed for 1 full year and don't do one productive thing, you will turn 20 years old. If I'm 87 years old, in bed for a year and do nothing, I will turn 88. Anybody can grow older. That doesn't take any talent or ability. The idea is to grow up by always finding opportunity and change. Have no regrets. The elderly usually don't have regrets for what we did, but rather for things we did not do. The only people who fear are those with regrets. She concluded her speech by courageously singing The Rose. She challenged each of us to study the lyrics and live them out in our daily lives. At the year's end, Rose finished the college degree she had begun all those years ago. 1 week after graduation, Rose died peacefully in her sleep. Over 2,000 college students attended her funeral in a tribute to the wonderful woman who taught by example that it's never too late to be all that you can possibly be. Great story. Another way to have a wonderful community in your school is by mentoring. Have you thought about this? We need to develop systems of mentoring. Teachers with assistants, experienced teacher with new teachers. We all need someone to go to. Principals with past principals or fellow principals. One of the things we changed when I was on the board at the American Montessori Society is every year we voted for someone to be our president, right? And then she would fumble around and she would try to learn what their responsibilities were and the year was up. So we said, let's stop that nonsense. Now, you know what we have in the American Montessori Society board? We have the past president, the new president, and the president-to-be. 3 people run it. And every year the past president gets finished, the president becomes get the idea? Isn't that great? I thought that was a great idea. Board members with new members. That's another thing that I wanted done when I was on the board. No wonder I'm not on the board anymore. I kept changing them. I felt when we got new board members, they should come before they were board members and sit at our meeting. Because when I was all of a sudden a new board member, I sat there and I had no idea what was going on. You feel like an idiot. So we have them come, they only meet like 4 times a year. So they would come the one time and don't have to speak, they just stay in the back and listen. Then the next time they're on the board. Parents with parents. There's another school that I'm consultant with in Ohio, and every year they have me come and give the open up the school talk, and every new parent sits next to a parent who's been at the school. They're paired up by the principal. And so if they get a newsletter and they don't understand something, they don't call the principal or the teacher, they call this mentor. Isn't that a great idea? And they're there, they mentor them. Then the next year, maybe that new person who was being mentored this year will mentor somebody else. Everybody wants to do a better job. We learn from good models. We learn from our mistakes. I think that's why I'm a good teacher trainer, because I made so many mistakes that I say to the students, don't do this, I did it, it didn't work. Because we all make mistakes. We learn from our mistakes and from the mistakes of others. Mentoring or coaching isn't an addition to a leader's job, it's an integral part of a leader's job. People hear what we say, but they see what we're doing. Seeing is believing, right? There's a wonderful little book, I quoted it before, 144 Ways to Walk the Talk by Eric Harvey. He said, recognize and celebrate those we work with. Watch for intelligent risk-taking no matter what the outcome. James Conant said, behold the turtle. He makes progress only when he sticks out his neck out. Perhaps we need to get a personal goal to learn something new about those we work with each week or each year. But maybe on one of the schools that I work with, this came from them, at a staff meeting, they decided that every week they would have lunch with or take playground duty with or some way so they could find something else about another person that's in their school so that they could know them a little better. Don't wait until their husband dies or their child is very ill. That's when we find out about people. Isn't that sad? I never knew about the poverty and the maltreatment of people in New Orleans until we had the flood. Why didn't we know that before? Why? I don't know. I think it's because we don't talk to each other. I really work hard on my campus to sit with new people all the time so that I can really get to know them a little bit better. We just brought in 3 sisters, religious sisters from Iraq. Their mother superior wanted them to come and be with us because she's afraid they're all going to lose their lives. And so after the war is over, maybe these 3 women can go back and create their community again. They're not coming to stay with us forever. But everyone's reaching out to be with them. Let's say to ourselves at this conference, is there someone here at the conference that you see at other conferences but you don't know? Why not try to find out something about them? I've had a day of meeting new people. There was a mother here last night, Pam. She didn't come back tonight, I don't think. But she took me all around, showed me different schools today. And this woman's a go-getter. Cheryl and I have been talking on the phone, but now we've spent these days together, and that's a good thing. All right, last but not least, I've got another wonderful reading for you. I'm trying to keep this under an hour. I was a freshman in high school when I saw Kyle for the first time. He was walking home from school carrying all his books, and I wondered why anyone would bring all of their books home on a Friday. I assumed he was a nerd, and so I just kept on walking. As I walked by him, a bunch of kids were running toward him. They tripped him and knocked his books out of his arms. He landed in the dirt, and his glasses went flying. I saw this sadness in his eyes, and my heart went out to him. I jogged over, and as he crawled around looking for his glasses, I saw a tear in his eye. I handed him his glasses, and I declared the kids jerks. With a big smile on his face, he thanked me. It was one of those smiles that showed real gratitude. I helped him pick up his books, and as we walked and talked, I discovered he lived near me. We hung out all weekend. The more I got to know Kyle, the more I liked him, and my friends liked him. Over the next 4 years, Kyle and I became best friends. I teased him all the time about being a nerd. When we were seniors and planning for college, Kyle decided on Georgetown, and I went to Duke. He wanted to be a doctor, and I pursued a business career. I knew that we'd always be friends. The miles would never separate us. As valedictorian of our class, Kyle had the honor of giving the class speech on graduation day. Kyle looked great, a little nervous, but great. I assured him he'd do a fantastic job. He looked at me with one of those looks, the really grateful ones. Kyle began his speech. Graduation is a time to thank those who helped you make it through the tough years. Your parents, teachers, sibling, maybe a coach, but mostly your friends. I'm here to tell all of you that being a friend to someone is the best gift you can give them. I'm going to tell you a story. I listened in disbelief as Kyle told the story of the first day we met. He had planned to kill himself that weekend. He cleaned out his locker so his mother wouldn't have to. He looked at me and gave me a little smile. Thankfully, I didn't. My friend saved me from doing the unspeakable. A gasp went through the crowd as this handsome, popular guy told us about his weakest moments. I saw his mom and dad looking at me and smiling that same grateful smile. Not until that moment did I realize its depth. Let me stop at this and see if you have questions or anything you would like to add to what we talked about. Nothing like asking you to speak after a tearjerker, right? I had an adult student at Indiana U, and she cried every time I told something sad, and I would always feel bad, and I'd say to her, I'm so sorry, and she'd say, oh, sister, don't mind me, I'm a Hallmark card. Isn't that great? I'm just a Hallmark card. So that's my new phrase now, I'm just a Hallmark card. Questions? Do you have any other ideas of ways your community can sizzle? My plant have a question? Cheryl's husband last night was the first one to ask a question. He said, I'm the plant. So I asked the question first to get things going. Yes?
Not a question, but a comment.
Okay.
You're talking about positive attitude. I read a good book, I don't remember the author, but The Power of Positive Thinking.
Oh.
It's really good for faculties or whatever to, it really teaches you how to catch yourself, and you don't even realize you're thinking negatively. It really comes out.
Yeah. we don't know what we sound like. You know what I did when I was a young teacher teaching 66 kids in a classroom at a time, but I had the habit on? I wanted to be positive, but I didn't know if I was. So I put a tape recorder in my classroom. And at night I'd go into my bedroom and close the door and listen, and I was horrified. I didn't realize that I threatened. You know, if you don't do this, we're not doing that. I didn't realize I did that. I was very young, but it taught me a lot. So hearing what you sound like is very powerful. We have to catch ourselves being negative and stop that. I told them last night I avoid negative people like the plague because I don't want to be with them. Anything else? Well, we made it on time. The custodian doesn't have to take the chairs down tonight, though, does he? Because we're going to be here tomorrow morning. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. I'm hoping we'll have another great day. Thank you very much.